Are you running a B2B sales team and headcount is your path to scale, meaning you've got to hire some awesome people to come on board, carry a quota, and get you to that next number? Well, let me tell you, we have seen people fail at this 1,000 times, and there are 7 major fails that if you can avoid these mistakes, you'll have great success. Let's go. Hey, it's Hillman Sori here from ClozeLoop, where we work with the fastest growing B2B sales teams on the planet. We specifically focus on sales strategy, sales training, and sales enablement. And whoa, we've seen some colossal fails when it comes to hiring sales teams to scale. So I'm going to share these with you right here. There's going to be 7 coming up. And at the end, I got a bonus one for you. So stay tuned. First off, number 7. You don't know what you're looking for. You know that old adage that once you know what you're looking for, it's easy to find? Well, here's the deal. A lot of people set out and they're like, I just need to find salespeople, They go get a recruiter. They put posts online. They churn up their network and they're just looking for a quote unquote good salesperson. Well, you know what? All salespeople are not created equally. The salesperson who'd be awesome in a transactional sale is not the person that's going to stick with your prospect through 18 to 36 months if you sell some giant enterprise solution. The salesperson who's really great at doing sourcing and doing that top of funnel activity is not necessarily the person who's going to be highly effective at the technical sale when it comes down to a technical demo. So you've got to know what you need and what it is that you're looking for. And how do you do it? You build a competency matrix. It's really easy. The competency matrix has you lay out really specifically what the 7 to 10 most critical things are that you need for this salesperson to be competent in being able to pull off. It might be that the salesperson needs to do great discovery, needs to be really good at asking questions, needs to have a high level of curiosity. I'm just making these up. For your own organization, you can either look around the people that you've got right now who are killing it, or in your head, think about your customer and how you best position your salesperson to have success in having conversations with that type of an organization and the personas in that organization. But again, if you don't know what you're looking for, you end up with this hodgepodge, and then you start making some poor decisions that are not necessarily best for your organization. Let's talk about that. I hear all the time that people are trying to hire folks who have graduated from a certain group of schools, or trying to hire people who have already been employed in other organizations. Now, what's interesting is those schools don't have a monopoly on great sales talent. It's just that people from those schools have gone on to succeed in sales roles somewhere else. Does that mean that that person is ideal for you and your organization? Not necessarily. And some of these big organizations that folks try to recruit from, you're looking at the pedigree. Wow, Hillman worked at this company and worked at that company and did well there. Well, you know what? Does that correlate to your industry? Does that company have the same brand, the same position in the marketplace, even the same product and sales cycle that you do? Maybe not. If not, there's great news. You don't have to go pay an arm and a leg for those individuals. You go back to number 7, which is identifying your competency matrix, and you go find the people that are unsought. What does that mean for you? Less competition, probably lower wages, and you get somebody who's really excited to be in the role for your company, not leveraging their past success, as dubious as that may be, into a future role with you. Number 5, you're spending way too much time on phone screens. I've heard that you've got the talent team inside of your organization, or maybe even just your hiring manager, spending 45 minutes, half an hour on a phone screen. Look, salespeople rarely, you know how hard we have to work to get that much time with a prospect? Treat the entire interview process like your sales process. If in fact, your prospects are laying around all day long and they're waiting for the phone to ring and they pick up the phone and they're like, oh my gosh, I am so glad you called. And they've got 45 minutes to an hour on the phone, cold, to have a conversation with your salesperson, then you know what? By all means, spend an hour on a cold conversation with a candidate. But if you're like most of our clients who might get 5 to 7 minutes tops in a cold conversation, then you know what? Put your candidate on the spot for the same amount of time. You got a 7-minute phone screen. Check out the description below for an indication as to how to do that. It's a key to make sure that you are patterning your hiring process and the interview process aligned with how the salesperson is going to conduct themselves once they're inside of your organization. So you get some real evidence as to whether or not this person is a good fit or if they're all hat, no cattle. The number 4 reason why folks fail to hire effectively is they're not using assessments. This one boggles my mind. I'm not quite sure why if you could ask someone to take an objective analytical assessment that correlates to their sales skills and gives you a readout that helps to inform your interview process, I just don't get why you wouldn't do that. Not cost prohibitive typically. It does create another step in the process, but you know what? Someone's willingness to take the assessment is actually part of the assessment. So here's the deal. There are lots of assessment tools out there. Some of them fall into the category of behavioral assessments. And you know what? If you're worried about your team and the culture and whether or not somebody's a team player, or if they're gonna have, a toxic personality, then sure, go for one of those, that's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. There's also those personality assessments, right? Like Myers-Briggs, where you're doing the ENFJ, I can't remember completely all the letters, but anyway, doing one of those, that's cute, Cosmo quiz type thing. I don't mean to diminish it, but when you're hiring salespeople, not critical. What you need is a sales skills assessment. A sales skills assessment lets you know where somebody is today, what they've learned, what they apply, and what you can expect in your organization. Now, is this an end-all be-all? Does it mean that suddenly somebody comes back with flying colors and that means they're gonna be a great salesperson for you? Absolutely not, but you know what? It's a data point. The more data points you can collect on the front end of hiring a candidate, the more successful they are likely to be once you put them in the organization. Here's the other piece that's great about assessments. With respect to assessments, you take these things, you get the information back. If you hire the individual, you've got a coaching roadmap with respect to how you get the person trained up, how you get the person indoctrinated into your organization, and where they're going to need coaching support and professional development with you going forward. And I have never met a good salesperson who doesn't like an evaluation of their skills. We all love it. We're completely motivated by metrics and numbers, whether it's compensated or something else. We like to win. Good salespeople will love to take this assessment. It will not be an impediment to your hiring process. Instead, I think it'll augment it. The number 3 reason why folks fail at hiring salespeople is because they don't do interview blocking. Now, I don't mean like blocking, like getting in front of somebody. No, that's not what I mean. Interview blocking is kind of like theater. You need to know why you're pulling the specific individuals into the interview process and what their roles are. So if you're doing it on Zoom because you're working from home, or if you're doing it in an office, you don't just catch as catch can. Hey, Sally, are you available on Friday at 2? I got a candidate coming through. Okay, great. We'll see you at 2 o'clock. Sally gets there completely unprepared, has no idea what her role is in the interview process, is just showing up and is going to ask the same questions that Jimmy's going to ask in the next interview next Tuesday. No way. Everybody's got to have a role. Everybody has specific questions or specific things that they're trying to do. Maybe one is the evangelist for the company because you still got to woo people into the organization, right? Maybe one is vetting dates and times and the chronology and the statistics around numbers and how they've done effectively there and keeping track of those things. Maybe one is the coach. Hey, when you go speak to Hillman, here's something that you should really be focusing on because I think he's going to want to hear that. You got to know what each person's role is in the interview process. And if you can, keep it consistent. You don't want to switch people around. Get somebody who's really good at the chronology piece and they just lock that thing down, right? But here's the point. When you do this, you create a rich and immersive interview environment for your candidate, but you also get data points that you need to be successful in making a decision as to who's going to be a good fit in your organization. You can't do that when every interview is pretty much net new and folks are scrambling at the last minute because someone just got out of a conversation, someone just finished lunch, someone just happened to be available, and you're showing up there and you're just kind of meandering through the types of things that somebody asked you once in an interview. That's not going to be effective. It's going to fail. You know why it's going to fail? Because salespeople are salespeople. So we're typically pretty darn good at the interview process, right? So let's talk about number 2. Number 2 is that you're not using an experiential interview process. Here's what I mean by that. If there is something you have identified back in step 7 that is critical for your sales candidate to have, for your hire to have as a competency, don't just take someone's word for it. Hey, Hillman, are you pretty diligent, willing to work after hours and pretty detail-oriented? Why, yes, I am, right? No, that's not the idea. You've got to get evidence. So this is where you got to do some work on the front end of the process to figure out how do you create the experience inside of the interview for you to ascertain whether or not that person can do this effectively. Now, I know some people are going, oh yeah, we've got this docked in. We ask people to do a demo. Okay, that's fine. How big is the demo process? How much of a part of your sales process is the demo? If it's 80%, if you've got a book demo on your, a button on your website that says book demo now, sure, that's great. If there's anything else the salesperson might need to do, or anything you'd like to see them be competent around, then you should include something experiential in your interview process. So what does that mean? I mentioned something just a little bit earlier around coaching. What we've done with folks, because we like to work with organizations who are obviously dedicated to sales training, dedicated to sales coaching, really interested in moving someone up the ladder incrementally and creating professional development opportunities. So coaching is key. So we'll set up a couple different interviews. One will be blocked going around chronology, going through someone's specific experience, going through their specific relevant experience to our organization, right? The next one, coming out of that interview, the person has someone who we call the coach or the ally, who will call and they'll say, hey, Hillman, you did really great. You know what? You're going to meet with Corey next week. And I love what you shared with us around leadership, and we love what you shared around your curiosity and your ability to move the needle on some numbers. The numbers piece is going to be key with Corey. So what I'd like you to do in preparation for this interview is come prepared to talk about specific numbers that you impacted individually. And bring those up in this conversation with Corey. He'll probably ask you some questions about X, Y, and Z. Just be prepared to speak numbers. Now, what do you think Corey should be looking for? Of course, Corey and I have had a conversation about this. We want to see if this individual is coachable, right? We've actually done interviews with folks before who worked in an environment. The corporate culture was such that it was very fast-paced, lots of interruptions, but lots of deadlines for these salespeople to hit, right? So what we did is we had the person actually sit in a conference room. The place actually had glass conference rooms. They sat in a conference room, and we gave them a task that needed to be completed in about 45 minutes, and then we sent in people to interrupt them. Someone would knock on the door and go, hey, Hillman, are you the one interviewing for the job? God, that's great. So what are you thinking so far? How's it going? Because we wanted to see, did they have the ability to delicately, politically say, you know what, Sally, I really appreciate meeting you. I'm actually on a deadline to complete this thing in 45 minutes. Is there a way I could catch up with you after the interview and share my experience and learn a little bit about what's going on with you? Just any element of that would have been great. So we set up the experience. Because what happens if you ask an individual, how good are you at managing tasks and deadlines and multitasking and your political your ability to navigate the politics of a company? Of course, they're going to go, yes, I do that very well. Absolutely, I do. We want the evidence. All about evidence. During the chronology portion of the interview, they are getting statistics that are completely irrelevant to their business. So salespeople might have on LinkedIn, or if they've got a resume or sent you over just some stats on what they've done, they might say, you know, year over year, 120%, month over month, or always hit my quota every quarter. Okay, great. If that's what you need, and if the organization they came from is exactly like your organization, selling exactly the same thing that you're selling and is exactly positioned in the same place in your marketplace, then that's a great fit. Slot them right in. I'd be curious why they're leaving, right? Okay. If that's not the case, and there are things that are important for your business, maybe you're driving average contract value. Maybe you're moving upstream from a transactional sell to a more enterprise sell, and you want somebody who can handle that. Maybe you need to create greater velocity in the pipe. Well, ask about those things. I know this sounds obvious, but a lot of times we default to what the salesperson has given us as the numbers that we should be using. It's almost that old sales axiom of if you can't fix it, feature it. So what do you think they put out there? They put out there the things that give them the best light, right? Well, we need to investigate the things that we have identified are actually going to move the needle on our B2B sales growth. Otherwise, we can't hold them accountable to the fact that when they get here, they're not doing what we want them to do. So let's see if we can figure out some indications. It doesn't have to be a direct correlation, but we have to figure out some indications that allow us to hang our hat on the possibility that this candidate can perform on these specific metrics and move the needle on these specific things given their previous experience. Alignment in that chronology is what we're looking for. Okay, finally, the number one reason why people fail at B2B sales hiring is that they do not have a rubric. What do I mean by that? They're kind of doing this finger to the wind. Well, I really kind of liked Hillman. Well, yeah, but I kind of liked Corey. Well, you know what? I don't know. Stephanie had that real X factor. Yeah, but you know, Haley, well, she blew us away. But I don't know if she's really quite. It's a whole bunch of nonsense. Before you start the interview process, before you ever pick up the phone, even on a phone screen, you and your team have to take that competency matrix and then weight it with some values. Everything is not created equal. Maybe curiosity is the biggest thing that you've realized is gonna make your person that you hire successful. So weight that one more heavily in the matrix, because that's what we're looking for. And each interviewer gets this rubric, and right after the interview, they put in their numbers. We're gonna give them a ranking on numbers. And before you actually have the interview process, you're gonna set up both the rubric and the baseline score. Anything lower than this, we will not hire. Anything higher than this, we'll absolutely look at. And then what do you think you do? You take the candidate that scored the highest. Now, I know you're saying, but you know what? I've got a gut for this. I've hired people a lot. I can't put everything into just a rubric, Hillman. I don't want to be that stringent, and our culture dictates that we're looking for lots of different things. That's fantastic. Take the 8 to 10 things that you know you absolutely have to have, and then create one extra one. You know what we're going to call that extra one? The X factor. Let the people who you've involved in this hiring process fill out the X factor and put a heavy weight on that X factor. If you've got some folks whose opinions and whose gut you really trust, but if you're not operating on numbers, you fall into the biggest danger, which is the bonus. The bonus is you're too emotionally invested in your hiring process. And you know what? I don't blame you, because every little head that comes at you as a potential candidate, you're looking at a certain number attached to with respect to revenue. You're looking at the contribution that they're going to make to your culture. You're looking at the growth of both your sales team as well as of your market share. There is so much attached to each individual that we can't help but having a little bit of ownership in each candidate. We actually really want each candidate to succeed. Why else would we waste so many hours interviewing, right? Who wants to sit through interviews? If you like interviews, I don't know, you might have an issue, because it's not a ton of fun, right? What's fun is getting that great candidate when the lights start going off and you start imagining this person on calls, closing deals, working with them consistently, growing inside your company. All that stuff is fantastic. And we can't help but have those feelings for the human being that we're talking to on the other side of this process. So if we get emotionally involved, we start making either hasty decisions, or we start this confirmation bias thing where we start believing, yeah, you know, he didn't have the right answer for that, but is that really so important? So dull out the confirmation bias by setting up all of these other patterns in the front end of your process. And I guarantee you're going to bring in some absolutely stellar candidates who are going to be incredibly successful and happy to work for you. And you know what? They're going to report back that your interview process was rigorous, was fair, and set them up for success. What's better than that? Good luck. All right. I'm Hillman Sori, ClozeLoop. There's some information in the description below. Hey, if you like this video, click like. If you are growing a B2B sales team, click subscribe, because we pump out content all the time expressly for you. And if you're hiring salespeople and you've got some great tips, drop them in the comments below. I'm sure everybody would love to see them. See you next time.